Hi, welcome to the future-proof tier list of Reverse 1999. Now, before we dive into more details, there are a few disclaimers to make. First, I'm rather strict guy when it comes to tier list, so only the top of the top gets to have S tier. The units that are not Apex but are still considered meta will go to A tier, and B tier is where I put the unit I consider usable but not meta in this game. Secondly, I will be using future patches in the consideration since each new character release will shake up the meta in different ways, and this is a very team-focused game. Lastly, this tier list is for late game only, with everyone at their max potential with Resonance at level 10 and with Insight at level 3. I will be making a separate video on best unit for early game, but that will mostly focus on some 4-star units since a few 4-star units are incredibly powerful. They just won't make it to the end game because they're missing Insight 3, which is a passive, 60 levels, and 5 Resonant levels. Now let's get started with the Baby Blue is a strong mental damage support who solely focuses on boosting the damage of mental teams. She has long-lasting debuff and a control ultimate. She does lack damage herself in exchange of her capability as a support, great when paired with the likes of Charlie and Matilda. B tier. Bloom Party is extremely useful healer for early game and doesn't need to be raised due to her healing skill of missing health instead of her stats. Very good as a healer for any team even into late game. A tier. Cornbloom is an absolutely insane reality sub DPS who is juiced both on DPS and damage. Her debuff skill can apply long-lasting debuff that increase the damage potential, and her damage skill is on the upper side in terms of damage for an AoE skill. Her ultimate also does an absolutely insane amount of damage along with 2-turn seal. She can pretty much be paired with any reality DPS that has strong self-buffing like Centurion or Lydia, so they can benefit more from her defense threats. Absolute S tier. Charlie is a DPS character who does a lot of damage when conditions are met. Her condition become much easier to meet at Portrait 3, at which point she is considered one of the best mental DPS at the moment. Both her skill does high amount of single target damage, and her ultimate can also dispel enemy buffs. She is best paired with support like Baby Bloom, who can target enemies, mental defense, and in the future Tooth Fairy, as Charlie is a bit lacking when it comes to crit. A tier. Click is supposed to be a sub-DPS defense support who's focused on reducing damage from reality damage. Even though both of his skills are single target, they don't offer nearly as much damage as a single target skill should. He also provides no damage boost for the team, and only his ultimate can provide team-wide protection. Certified D tier. DK is a beast DPS who has a little bit of healing in her kit. Her kit is very selfish as she really only helps herself. You could use her as your beast DPS if you have no other choices, but she is not the best DPS when compared to other 6-star options we have. B tier. Matilda is a French lesbian mental DPS who has a lot of crit in her kit. Unfortunately, she is outdone by the like of Charlie in terms of damage potential. Gets really cute outfit in the future though. C tier. Necrologist is a very special character that will only be useful in certain conditions. Her skill can grant a revive to all allies except herself, which give her ways to cheese high damage attacks. Her dispel is also placed in her single target skill, but outside of those specific situations, she's not that useful of units. C tier. Satsuki is a CC specialist whose kit is full of rigidity, which become petrified in 2 stacks. She also petrifies the enemy with the highest attack when she dies, which can be helpful in some stages. Her skill's damage is rather impressive with rigidity locked behind tier 2 and tier 3 skill, which make her difficult to use. C tier. Sonato is a strong free 5-star who you will get full portrait through beginner mission and tasks. Her disarm is quite easy to access and her buffs are reasonable. She's very beginner friendly, but we do get our hands in much stronger support later on, so B tier. Sweetheart provides a reasonable amount of damage if you can provide debuff with her teammates. I would have given her a higher tier, especially considering the defense reduction she has and the damage multiplier. But with Centurion and also Melanie, who's coming at 1.1, existing in the beast type, she will be pushed down to C tier. Tenant is a British lesbian reality support who can provide team-wide shield and has reality defense thread attached to her ultimate. Similar to Sweetheart, she would be considered higher if Cornbloom doesn't exist, but now she gets to sit in the B tier. X is an extremely dispel-focused unit. He can dispel buffs and can counter with his skill and reduce enemy moxie with his ultimate. His insight will also lock up enemy actions after dispelling. He will be very useful against some enemies, but won't be useful in others. B tier. And that's all the 5-star we have on release. I personally value damage more than survivability, as currently killing enemy faster is almost always the solution. This could change eventually as the enemy in this game become more powerful and does more damage, but until then, pure survivability support will always be ranked lower. And now it's time for A Knight is the only 6-star spirit DPS we will have for a very long time. He's exceptionally at killing mobs, and the insight gave up to 80% damage boost against enemy at low health. 8% is a very insane number. He also cycled to his ultimate very fast due to his skill provide himself moxie, and his ultimate also provide him with a single use 50% damage boost if it killed an enemy. Would be higher if his effects are not tied to defeating enemy as much. A tier. Unleash the sub DPS who gets free skill upgrade from her insight and her ultimate. She has good team buff and has days on her level 3 skill. You can even use tuner skill to refresh her tier 3 skill to be used by other characters, making her good in any team as a sub DPS, though it takes some luck. You can also use her as main DPS in the early game, working really well with the like of regular since Unleash passive give her damage bonus and penetration every other turn. A tier. Centurion is the most broken standard DPS in the game, crazy high base attack value with crazy high damage boost when at higher moxie. Overall, just a broken character that will carry you throughout the game. Best pair with Cornbloom, who will also have very good damage and can reduce enemy defense. You can also pair with Tenet, who is also capable of reducing enemy defense, but doesn't do as much damage and is more defensive. S tier. Jervis 3 specializes in two things. The first thing is her ability to apply Petrify pretty consistently with her skill and ultimate. The other thing is that she empowers the survivability of all plant units in the team with her Insight 3. Downside is that she's not the best DPS out there as she gave up tons of damage for utility. Best used in plant teams and mental teams since reality damage does remove Petrify on hit. Honestly speaking, can be used anywhere as long as enemy can be petrified. A tier. Eternity is a very special character who can solo content by herself. Though she doesn't do as much damage as the S tier DPS, her insight brings her damage up quite significantly once it's stacked. Also, while not as tanky as the actual tanks, her insight and her ultimate lifesteal make her a potent drain tank. She's often used as a solo carry, but she's not as good against single target bosses since she will have trouble sustaining against those. If used in a team, Cornbloom is again the best in slot as her support. A tier. Lydia is a crit-focused reality DPS. Her skill and ultimate has really good base damage and her insight boosts her crit like no other. She's not quite as good until she's built since her kit rely on crit, and all that crit are locked behind resonance and insight, which will take a while to build. She's not quite as powerful as the newer DPS coming in limited in the future, but she is still a very good DPS to use. For support, it's still going to be Cornbloom. It's pretty much always her when it comes to supporting any reality DPS at the moment. Also, since she doesn't have a lot of built-in damage boosts, instead have her power budget shift into crit completely, damage boosts buff her better than any other DPS. This means Sonato and Anna Lee works really well with her as well. Unfortunately, the meta unit Tooth Fairy from 1.2 doesn't quite work with her too well since she is already overflowing with crit, which bring her lower in the meta. B tier. Medicine Pocket is the best healer in the game when it comes to survivability. He is good in the early game and he has some damage boost capability in her skill. But by 1.2, the true meta healer Tooth Fairy comes out, he pretty much quit out the meta. At that point, the meta healer becomes Sotheby in the Channeling team and Tooth Fairy with another DPS carry. Plus, even if you don't have him in the early game or even late game, Bloom Party can provide enough survivability with less investment due to percentage healing. B tier. New Babel, another more defensive unit that focuses on providing team with survivability. She has an interesting counter called Vin Partner from her ultimate, which is considered a follow-up attack instead of a regular counter. This could help her synergy with 37, which come out at 1.4, but until then she's pretty useless as a 6-star. C tier. Reckless is the poster child of the game. She generates Moxie relatively fast and has strong ultimate with the ability to apply dodge to the entire team, which make them completely immune to non-ultimate damage for one turn, assuming they don't act afterwards. Her insight make her much better to act every other turn, and this means she is better used as a sub DPS with another carry. Or you can combo her with Pico from patch 1.1 who has very similar kit. A tier. Sotheby is a healer with a kit that's focused more on poison than healing. Her survivability is very much enough for the game's content, but her focus on poison make her the primary healer for Changling from patch 1.2. Changling is one of the best DPS the game has to offer. Her poison also allows any carry to use Blasphemer of Night with almost max uptime due to her continuous poison application, which make her a very good choice for a healer. You can even use her as a main DPS as well since poison is now weak in this game. One weakness she has is she is reliant on her ultimate in the early game for any form of burst healing until you have her at Insight 3. Overall, still a very solid A tier. Voyager is another defense utility-focused character. However, unlike New Babel, she does have a very strong utility skill that applies 2 stack of confusion on enemy, which is equal to 50% crit rate increase for anyone that's attacking the said enemy. Her insight can practically disable a lot of enemies if they're not using attack skill every 3 action, but a lot of endgame enemies have anti-disable. You can put her in any team as a support for general utility, but it's best used in fights where you can put down 4 units on fields. B tier. Oh well, let's conclude all the 5 and 6 stars unit the game has during launch. Again, I will have a separate video dedicated to the best lower tier units for early game. Some of them are as powerful as S tier in this tier list when compared at Inside 2, all while being extremely cheap to build as well. Also, again, all this information are based on my personal experience from playing the Liscense server as a free-to-play, so if anyone have other opinions, feel free to leave it on the comment down below. This has been Steambax, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.